Ethan was the kind of man who thought life was a game he could always win. Young, handsome, and a self-made millionaire, he carried himself with an air of untouchable confidence. One evening, in the dim glow of a high-end bar, he sat surrounded by his equally wealthy and arrogant friends. Their laughter was loud, their conversations dripping with ego. It was during one of these playful yet cruel exchanges that a friend smirked and threw out a challenge: marry an obese woman for 6 months, just to prove that Ethan could make anything, or anyone, look glamorous. At first, Ethan laughed it off. But as the idea took root, the competitive side of him stirred. It seemed harmless, a bit of fun, and the money they promised if he pulled it off was hardly the point. It was about proving he could win at any game. He agreed without hesitation, shaking hands over the bet as though it were just another business deal. Days later, at a charity event, Ethan noticed her, Claire. She wasn't the type of woman who turned heads in a crowd for her looks, but there was something about her presence. Her kind eyes seemed to carry a light of their own, and her warm smile made people feel instantly seen. She was plus-sized, confident, and radiated a genuine warmth that contrasted sharply with the shallow glitter of his world. Ethan, masking his intentions, charmed her effortlessly. He spoke words of affection, feigned deep interest, and before long, asked her to marry him. Claire, trusting and open-hearted, said yes, believing she had found a man who loved her. She had no idea her new husband's heart was clouded by a cruel wager that would soon change them both forever. When Ethan moved into Claire's small, cozy home, he braced himself for discomfort. The walls were painted in warm, lived-in colors, the furniture mismatched but inviting. It was a far cry from his sleek, modern penthouse, and he assumed the coming months would feel like an endurance test. Yet, from the very first morning, Claire's presence disarmed him. She greeted him with fresh coffee and a smile that carried no demands, no hidden agenda, just genuine warmth. Over the days that followed, Ethan noticed little things that unsettled his preconceived notions. Claire cooked hearty meals not just for them, but for Mrs. Henderson, the elderly widow next door who struggled to get around. She spent her afternoons volunteering at the local shelter, serving meals, and listening to the stories of people most of the world ignored. On weekends, she tutored underprivileged kids at the community center, cheering their smallest achievements as if they were grand victories. She asked nothing of Ethan in return. Even when he kept his distance, buried in his phone or leaving without explanation, she treated him with patience and respect. At first, he chalked it up to politeness. But as the days turned into weeks, he began to see how others responded to her. The way children ran into her arms, the way strangers left her with lighter hearts, the way even the grumpy old man at the corner store softened in her presence. It was baffling to him. She didn't have his wealth, his influence, or his connections, yet she had something far more valuable: the ability to make people feel loved and important. Ethan found himself watching her more closely, unsettled by a realization he couldn't quite name, a quiet truth that was beginning to loosen the grip of his shallow intentions. The rain came down in steady sheets that night, blurring the streetlights into soft halos as Ethan made his way to the shelter to pick Claire up. He intended to wait in the car, but a sudden gust of wind pushed him toward the entrance. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the quiet hum of tired voices and the faint aroma of soup. He spotted Claire in a far corner, sitting beside a young woman whose clothes were worn thin, a baby cradled in her arms. Ethan lingered near the doorway, unseen, and listened. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke about losing her job, falling behind on rent, and not knowing how she would feed her child. Claire didn't interrupt with advice or platitudes, she simply listened, her eyes steady and kind. When she spoke, her tone was calm and full of understanding. "You're not alone," she said gently. "We'll figure this out together. You are stronger than you think." Her words carried no hint of pity, only a deep, unwavering compassion that seemed to wrap around the woman like a blanket. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't charity for the sake of appearances. Claire's kindness was genuine, and it asked for nothing in return. A memory flashed in his mind, the smug laughter of his friends at the bar, the smugness in his own voice when he agreed to the bet. Standing there, he felt the weight of his choices settle heavily on his shoulders. For the first time, he saw Claire not as the subject of a cruel game, but as a woman whose beauty radiated from a place far deeper than appearances. And for the first time, the shame was his alone to carry. The night of the deadline arrived like a storm Ethan could no longer outrun. The bar was exactly as he remembered, dim lights, clinking glasses, and the same circle of smug faces that had once felt like home. His friends were already gathered in their usual corner, grinning in anticipation. One of them raised a glass as he walked in. "Well, Ethan, let's hear it. 6 months. How'd our little bet turn out?" But Ethan wasn't alone. Claire walked beside him, her hand resting in his, her expression calm but curious. He could feel the warmth of her fingers, grounding him as his heart pounded. Taking a deep breath, he turned to face the group. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "When I married Claire, it wasn't for love. It was because of you. Because of this stupid bet." He paused, catching the flicker of confusion in Claire's eyes, then pushed on. "I thought it would be a joke. I thought I'd win. But instead, I learned how empty I was, and how full a life can be when you live for more than yourself." A stunned silence fell over the table. Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, the prize money they had promised. He set it down untouched. "This," he said, "was the worst decision I ever made, and the best accident that ever happened to me. Because it led me to her." Somewhere in the quiet, Claire's grip on his hand tightened. His friends shifted uncomfortably, no witty retorts left to throw. For the first time, Ethan didn't care about winning their approval, he had already found something worth far more. The day of the vow renewal was bathed in soft sunlight, the kind that seemed to bless everything it touched. Claire stood in a simple ivory dress, her smile radiant, her eyes glistening with emotion. Ethan, dressed in a modest suit, couldn't stop looking at her, not because of the dress or the setting, but because he finally saw her for what she had always been, his anchor, his heart, his home. The small gathering was filled with people whose lives they had touched, children from the community center, families from the shelter, and yes, even the friends who once mocked him. Those same friends now sat quietly in the front row, their faces softened with something close to respect. When Ethan spoke his vows, his voice caught more than once. He promised to stand beside her, to fight for the causes she believed in, and to love her with a truth he hadn't known existed before her. Claire, in turn, spoke of forgiveness, of second chances, and of the man he had become. In the months since his confession, Ethan had sold one of his prized luxury cars, using the money to expand the shelter Claire ran. The two of them worked side by side every day, serving meals, organizing drives, and listening to stories that reminded them of the power of compassion. As they kissed to seal their renewed vows, applause rippled through the crowd. Ethan's thoughts drifted to the night of the bet, and a faint, ironic smile touched his lips. "I married her as a bet," he thought, "but in the end, I won something no money could ever buy." And for the first time in his life, Ethan knew he had truly won. Ethan's journey began with arrogance and a cruel wager, a shallow game meant to stroke his ego. But through Claire's unwavering kindness, he was confronted with a truth he had never known, that real wealth isn't measured in money, but in the lives we touch and the love we give. What started as a heartless bet became the turning point of his life, stripping away the hollow pride he once wore like armor and replacing it with humility, compassion, and purpose. Claire didn't just forgive him. She inspired him to become a better man. Together, they built something far greater than status or fortune, a life rooted in service, love, and shared dreams. In the end, Ethan realized the bet had been meaningless, but the woman he married had given him everything that mattered. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about never letting go of the treasure he had almost lost.